I was thinking this morning. I was remembering a a time when I'd quite recently started doing yoga. I'd been to my first, few months of yoga classes, perhaps. And I was at the time I was working in an office. I had a real job, and I was walking home from the railway station one night. And as I was walking past a green space that I used to walk by, I noticed a beautiful bush on that green space. And I sort of stopped. I sort of went, oh, wow, that is fantastically beautiful. And then my thought process, I carried on. I went home. My thought process carried on. But you walk past that 5 days a week for the last however long I've been doing that walk, months, if not years. How come you've never noticed this bush before? And so I was talking to a friend of mine a few days later who'd been doing yoga rather longer than I had. And I recounted this episode to her, and she just looked me in the eye and she said, well, yeah, that's yoga for you. That's what yoga will do for you. And when I've been thinking about this question, the state of yoga, as we're calling it, so many words came into my mind, so many nouns, words like awareness, words like, I think somebody's already mentioned, presence, perspective, clarity, all of those sort of words, which all seemed to flow somehow from this idea of being yogurt. So I'm really going to borrow that term going forwards. And they all seem to flow from that. And I was also looking this morning, some of you might know, no, I'm going to track back a little bit on this. No, some of you might know a wonderful American teacher. He's not very active anymore these days, but an American teacher called Eric Schiffman. A wonderful teacher I had the privilege of studying with many years ago. And Eric produced a book where he describes yoga as the spirit and practice of moving into stillness. But he then goes on to explain what he means by stillness. And he says, stillness is not just being completely turned off. I'm paraphrasing somewhat now. But he equates the stillness to the stillness that one sort of perceives in a very rapidly spinning top, those old-fashioned toys, that appear at the center to be very, very still. And I was thinking that through as well. And those of you in the UK who are old enough, which may not be many of us, might remember in 1987, there was a massive storm, particularly in the southeast of England. Lots of trees blown down, lots of damage done, etc., etc. And I vividly remember being at home during that storm. Wind was howling, leaves were blowing everywhere, branches were falling off the trees. And then suddenly, everything went still. As the eye of the storm passed over, everything went quiet. And that was one of the most incredible moments that I still remember. And it doesn't mean that things were not happening outside me. Of course they were. But in the midst of all that activity, there was that point of stillness. And if we look back historically, as we will do on this course to some extent, if we look back historically at how all the ancient sages through the centuries have described or explained the state of yoga, one of the themes that comes through, as you probably all know, is a sense of stillness. We know Pātañjalayogaśāstra in the Yoga Sutras talks about chittavritti nirodha, however you translate nirodha, the restraint or the stilling of the spinning mind. Vritti literally means spinning, means rotating. But while we can highlight that, something I think that sometimes gets forgotten or gets overlooked is the question, okay, well, so what? Why is that a good thing to do? And again, something that feeds through if we look at the state of yoga historically, is this idea that by cultivating some form of mental stillness, we can get to understand better who we really are and get to understand better how we relate to the world around us. How, going back to what Lisa said about relationships, how we respond to the world around us, how we react to all the stuff, all the situations that life inevitably throws at us. Because with the best will in the world, we're not, probably any of us, going to spend the rest of our lives as hermits living in a cave in the mountains. We're going to be operating in the world, whatever the world is for each and every one of us. And so for me, perhaps what I'm ultimately trying to say